Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Media Boat Podcast. Today is September the 1st, 2021. We are officially in the last handful of months of 2021, if you can believe it, on the precipice of fall as we exit summer. Exciting times. This episode, I don't know, something. I don't have the numbers anymore. But what I can tell you is if you don't know what the Media Boat Podcast is, we are a podcast that talks about media, including movies, television, video games, and music, not necessarily in that order. My name is Matt. His name is Mike.
I'm Mike. He's Matt. This is episode 295 of the
Cool.
Media Boat Podcast. Also, I would like to say congratulations to all the new students entering Hogwarts today who left on the train. On September 1st at noon from King's Cross Station.
All right. It's 2021. Come on.
Yes, which means those kids from Harry Potter now have kids of their own going to Hogwarts.
Sure.
And you don't be late because that train leaves on time. Unless a house elf gets into your way. Then shenanigans begins.
I sense a theme in this episode. So we have Harry Potter nerds, but other kind of nerds, including anime nerds and video game nerds, are going to be very happy with this episode. So let's keep going.
And Jeopardy nerds, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and Jeopardy nerds too. Well, actually, you know what? They will be happy. Let's start the show as we always do with movies, and we always start movies with the weekend box office numbers. Now, I'm only going to say it once because if you say it 3 times, bad things happen. Your number one movie was Candyman. $22 million.
This does make director Nia Jackson, I believe. She is the first Black woman to have a number one movie at the box office. That sounds shocking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that's great. And then you said ever, or you implied ever. And I was like, oh. Okay, I thought you were gonna say horror movie, and I was like, okay, sure. But,
no,
wow.
You thought Ava DuVernay would do it, right?
Guess not.
Well, she almost did it with A Wrinkle in Time.
Right, but didn't.
Unfortunately, it came out the month following Black Panther, which dominated the box office constantly, being number one. Thus, it was number 2 when it debuted.
But hey, I guess the good way of looking at it is there's a first time for everything, and hopefully this allows more Black women to have the same success, which is good. I mean, that's nothing but good. So I'm glad that she was able to break that barrier.
Nia Costa, that's the name.
Thank you.
Gotta get the name right.
Gotta get the name right, or else this whole story doesn't mean anything. Yep. All right. Anyways. Number 2 is Free Guy. Second weekend made $13.1 million. That's sitting at 78.9. Number 3, Paw Patrol: the movie. Another $6.6 million. 24 million domestic so far. Number 4, Jungle Cruise made another $5 million. That reached the 100 million mark.
Its success a little bit later.
Yeah. And number 5, Don't Breathe 2 with another $2.8 million. That's at 24. Moving into upcoming releases. Well, guess what? It's more like upcoming release because everything got out of the way of Marvel's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Yes, I got reprimanded by someone by pronouncing it Shang, so now I know. I learned. It's Shang-Chi, right? Legend of the Ten Rings comes out this Friday. Again, notice, unlike Black Widow, only in theaters this time. You cannot pay the $30 to your Disney Plus to watch this. You have to go to a theater.
This also harkens back as to why Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney, because Black Widow is the only Marvel film to do or to have the
right to have done that
premiere access for Disney Plus.
Yeah, so this will be the ultimate tell about whether people are ready, I think, for to go to a actual real life theater right now to go see a Marvel movie. And it will prove Scarlett Johansson was either right or wrong, depending on its success.
I will probably end up seeing this, but due to some delays, which we may talk about at the end of the podcast here, we will talk about it in 2 weeks.
I mean, if you're watching the YouTube video, there's a giant hint on your shirt, is what I'll say. But if you're listening to the audio version, I'll leave it to be a mystery to you. All right. So that's your one new release. Nothing else coming out until the following week. Everything else got out of the way. So let's take that and move on to some movie news. And yes, as you said, we're going to talk about some box office numbers because it is officially September 1st, which means essentially the end of the summer movie season. Sure, we have Labor Day weekend coming up, which is often a good week for movies, but the summer blockbusters kind of end here, more or less. So how was the summer? Well, let's look back at the winners and losers. First up, let's compare it to last year's first before we go into that. Last year, of course, Tenet was your big winner, $58.4 million with a $364 million worldwide total.
Yeah, that's considered your winner.
Right.
With 58 being your domestic total and 364 for your international total.
Right.
And when it happened, everyone was poo-pooing like, oh, Tenet's a flop. Well, is it?
Is it though? Because now
we
have 2021 numbers to compare it to. And yes, you can argue that depending on where you live, a lot of the restrictions have not been lifted in the same way. A lot of people kind of started to go back and then maybe pulled back after the Delta variant spread. So it's a more complicated picture than just saying like, hey, but what about 2021? It's not that easy. So to put it into perspective, here's this year's big winners. A Quiet Place Part 2 opened with $57 million and then totaled $160 million domestic and $296 worldwide before F9, the Fast Saga, won the summer with the most successful opening weekend of $70 million and totaled $172 million domestic, $704 million worldwide. That $704 million worldwide is important here because even in 2021, that thing hit almost $1 billion.
Yeah, that wasn't a worldwide sensation. Then again, F9 or the Fast Saga is a worldwide box office juggernaut. It makes most of its money for the past 3 films have come from that international box office market. Making up more than half of its total, almost 66%.
But the domestic number though ended up getting beaten by Black Widow with its $80 million opening and totaled $181 million domestic, but only $371 worldwide.
So
interesting
Black
comparison.
Widow won the domestic battle,
but
lost. F9 won the international war
by twice, like by half of what the worldwide total of F9 was.
Right.
It goes to show you how strong the Chinese market is.
Yep. Even when you total all of what Disney had for the summer, still doesn't come to that $700 million mark.
No, Universal kind of took them to school this year, which has not been the story of the last decade at this point.
5 years at least. Disney ruling the box office summer.
Yeah, if not longer. And then more recently, Disney's Jungle Cruise made a $35 million opening, but only totaled $100 million, as we just mentioned, domestic so far, and $187 million worldwide. Also, Free Guy, Sony's entry into this fight.
No, Disney's entry into this fight.
Oh, that's also Disney. You're right.
Because that's a 20th Century Fox.
That's right.
Purchased.
Yes. Free Guy opened with 28 million and only totaled 81 domestic and 181 worldwide. The only other notable film here was Suicide Squad with 55 million worldwide, as no other film besides the ones that we mentioned crossed the 100 million mark worldwide. So is this another outlier? I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Is it less of an outlier than 2020? Certainly. But is it still different? Absolutely. These numbers prove that this is going to continue being the case until we achieve some sort of normalcy, I'm using quotes, at least domestically. What we're seeing with F9 is that there is an exception for a huge film like F9 to make a dent worldwide still, and not really see much of a difference.
As we've talked about on this podcast for years now, A lot of studios look more towards the international box office than they do rely on the domestic box office. Now, granted, there are still studios who heavily rely on American marketing for American dollars, but by and large, the big studios look globally to recuperate their cost for films. What this is telling me is that in the future, we may not see big tentpole films, or at least more scaled back and honed in. You're not going to, I can't really say that because Disney already, or 20th Century Fox already spent all the money for Avatar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So pulling that out of there here, because that's the one outlier that was already in production pre-pandemic. You're not going to see these $500 million budgets for films.
So are you proposing that COVID is going to force the industry to reconsider the tentpole?
COVID has already forced them to reconsider the tentpole, as they're no longer shooting on location, but rather in the digital sound stages, which we talked about last month. Pinewood Studios reconfigured their sound stages to have those LED walls and smart designers, so that way they don't have to travel. Everything's done in a studio now.
Do you envision then us going back to, or at least one of the studios kind of playing around with this idea of going back to the mid-'80s Paramount strategy, you know, the pre-Disney Michael Eisner strategy of base hits? Like just being like, all right, so we can't hit a home run with every film anymore. We're going to save money by investing in these smaller pictures with smaller talent, and then just release a lot of them, make a lot of them. And then maybe that's going to be just as successful.
I say that you see a lot of studios going back to their IP well, because it's well-known properties, stuff people can relate to. It hits the nostalgia factor, and it will get people to the theaters. It's the safe play. It's the reason the Emoji Movie was made. It's a safe play. And yes, I will always bring that up when talking about making a movie, because it's a known quantity. If your job's on the line, you're going to take something that's a known quantity rather than an unknown new original IP, which is a shame.
It is. But I think the flip side of this, though, is that if the race is no longer to the top of the box office, or at least if that's not as important as it used to be, maybe that does allow studios to be a little bit more like willing to give smaller projects a try.
I think you're going to see a lot more studios that are owned by actors or business managers pop up and create and help hone these smaller projects.
And we've already talked about that happening a handful over the last couple years, kind of either former or current actors making these kind of vanity studios for themselves and like making their own rules.
This does mean that film festivals will become more important than ever.
Yes.
As that's where studios buy films in order to distribute them. So it's a good time to be an independent filmmaker.
Maybe
we'll see.
On that note, let's keep diving into the industry here and talk about the other side of this conversation, which is, what about the movies that haven't come out yet? Well,
futures?
They're getting pushed. The latest release date shuffle has occurred, marking the first domino to fall in late 2021. According to research conducted by NRG, 67% of moviegoers say that they are, quote, very or somewhat comfortable visiting their local theater, which is down 11 points from July. Films that are
those 11 points.
Yeah, exactly. Films that are moving right now are Ghostbusters Afterlife, which has moved back a week from November 11th back to November 19th. Top Gun Maverick moved off its November 19th date all the way to May 27th, 22. Mission Impossible 7 moves further back from May 27th, 22 to September 30th, 22. And Jackass Forever, because no one is safe here, moves from October 22nd all the way to February 4th, 22. So if you're planning on seeing those movies and you're really excited for those things to come out this year, well, wait a little longer.
Do note that that Top Gun Maverick film is now 2 years post in the can.
Yeah.
When it will finally be released. Ghostbusters, I believe will be a year. And then Mission Impossible 7 is still currently filming.
Yeah.
And then Jackass moved, but that's only what, 4 months?
Yeah, it's not. It's probably just
one.
to see what happens over the holiday break and then like reconsider afterwards.
Yep.
So
that does put it before the Super Bowl, so don't be surprised they move it if that's why they did it.
Yeah.
Because no, I'm going to the movie theater during the Super Bowl.
Okay.
All right.
Well, on that note, that's it for movie news. So let's talk about a couple movies that we watched. Two very, very different movies.
So we each watched a film.
Yes.
I'm going to throw quotes around mine, calling it a film.
Okay. Wow. All right. Tell me how you really feel.
Okay. So, do you remember the film She's All That?
Oh, yeah. Amanda Bynes. It's based loosely on Shakespeare. Yes.
Yes. I don't think that's the right one.
It's a joke. Anyways.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, because I think that one's based off Midsummer Nights, but
it's a different movie.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry. She's All That. Yes.
Yeah. She's All That. Film from, I think, the 90s, right? Where they take the popular, or they take an unsung girl and make her popular.
Right.
Well, here comes the, what generation are we in? 2020 version.
Sir, yes.
Of that remixed for a guy.
I have a year for you. 1999.
Yeah.
I also have, it was Rachel Lee Cook. Not Amanda Bynes. I am thinking of a different movie.
You are thinking of a different movie. Although it might also be She's All That. No, well, I know what movie you're thinking of.
Yeah, anyways, doesn't matter. Let's talk about this movie.
So He's All That.
Yes.
Is the most Zoomer influencer film I've seen, to the point where it borders on trashy film.
Even more so than that thing you watched about influencers?
Yes, even more so about that. So this is on Netflix. It was like the #1 trending thing on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a free weekend. And I
Sure.
was like, sure, I need something to watch while I'm folding laundry. Let me put this on. It's a movie. It's on Netflix. How bad could it be?
Pretty bad?
Oh, shit. It is a 40-year-old version of what high school is currently.
Oh, boy.
Where everyone is an influencer. The guy in high school is I'm gonna throw like the guy in high school. Looks like he's 35.
Sure. As tradition goes.
As tradition goes. Looks like he's in Greece. And is a pop star in the making. Because it opens with him doing a music video. And the girl, who's a makeup influencer, discovers that he cheating, although we don't actually see cheating, he's just in his trailer with another girl. Oh, there's a croquembouche in there. So that's how affluent, like rah Hollywood fluent they are. And so she decides to, on a dare, take unknown guy and make him prom king. Because that's just what you do in high school. You become the influencer you want to be and use your makeup skills in order to win back the makeup company that you are sponsored by, because you lost all your viewers. You lost all your popularity. So now you got to get it all back.
Yeah. not just do something else or try something else with your video series, or like, I don't know, or maybe try to court different companies. No, that was the only company that could ever give you revenue, and you need to follow them or nothing else can happen to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens every day.
Yeah. It's just bad.
Sounds like it.
It's like I just wanted to turn it off, but then I couldn't look away from the train wreck that was happening in front of me. It's the most posh thing ever. They ride horses. There's a dance fighting battle in the middle of prom, all choreographed, and I don't know where they had the time to learn all the choreograph for this, because their life seemed pretty busy. But like, they stopped prom to have this like dance battle with everybody, all choreographed and everything. There's a scene where the guy they're trying to make all that, like, they take the makeup girl to the Union Station, LA Union Station, train station. And she goes, "Wow, I've never been here before. What is all this? Look at all these people." And they just use the trains like in public with everybody. Just like total mind blown. It's some of the worst like forced acting I've seen in a long time. It's cringy. Also, drinking game. Take a shot every time they say the word influencer or say how many viewers they have.
Oh no.
Or subscribers they have, because it's constant. Also, the guy uses a 50mm lens on literally everything, even though the photos that they show aren't 50mm photos. And it's like, oh, like you're taking a super far away picture using a 50mm lens.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be for up close. You don't do that. It's, like I said, it's cringy. It's weird. For some reason, it's the #1 movie on Netflix. I highly recommend you don't watch this thing unless you really want to either cringe at what high school is, or you really want to like have a bad movie night.
Yeah,
this is like a fun bad movie night.
Okay, so it's potentially enjoyable, say maybe with some friends and maybe some drinks.
Yes.
Or or your weapon of choice. And yeah, so maybe less so than actually like, is this going to be good?
Yeah, I made a drinking game out of it, which made me play. Well, I'll get to that in video games of what I played.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, that sounds bad.
I had a lot of drinks leading up to through this movie, just based off that drinking game I described.
So I guess like, don't watch He's All That.
Gen Z cringy worthy.
So that's a pass.
Hard pass, but I watched it anyways.
Fair enough.
But you watched something.
Oh boy, did I watch something. I didn't watch something. I watched a lot of something. And I need to give some context because I have not talked about this on this podcast yet, because up until this year, it was not something new. That there was nothing new to talk about. So last year, I kind of mentioned obliquely on the podcast that I kind of fell into an anime hole during the lockdown summer. I ended up watching some anime and figuring out like, okay, maybe some of this is all right. Well, one thing that had happened last year was that a seminal anime series that I'm sure a lot of our audience is probably familiar with was released on Netflix for the first time. Neon Genesis Evangelion. So real quick, if you don't know what Evangelion is, it's mecha anime, so giant robots, except there's a little bit of a catch. Yes, there's giant robots destroying things and other giant robots. There is that does exist here. but that's not all it is. It's like also very introspective and psychological, and is very like, has a reputation for getting really into the weeds with like spirituality and iconography and like the inner like minds of the characters here, to the extent where even there's episodes in the original series where like they completely take place in a character's brain. It gets really heady and really weird, but because of that, it has a very dedicated fan base.
It's a very anime.
It's, I would argue, one of the most anime animes. And that is a good thing and a very bad thing, because the other reputation that Ava has, and I want to be clear about, so that way we don't get people being like, I've heard some things about this. It does unfortunately sexualize underage girls a lot, to the point where it's a little gross. I would say probably more than a little gross. And yes, very common in other anime as well, but this show does a lot, and it does distract from a lot of the things it's trying to do. I think overall it's an interesting franchise, and I think this has some things that are actually legitimately interesting to say about things like depression. And I don't think that yes, the fan service is very distracting from that point, but I think that ultimately there's something to it. So if you're not familiar with the kind of the road that this show kind of went on, it kind of had a reputation of being like very strange, to the point where the creator later decided, well, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to make a series of 4 movies that retell the story of the original series, plus the movie called End of Evangelion that came out in 97, 2 years after the series. Rewrite all of it for a new generation of people, basically. That was the pitch. So this started in 2007 with the first one. They made the second one, they call it here in the States the Rebuild series, or Rebuild of Evangelion. Anyway, so the first one was 2007, second one was 2009. The third one wasn't until 2012 in Japan, even later here. I don't even think it got a theatrical release here in the States until like 2015 or 2016. And then finally, years later, the fourth and final film came out this year, exclusively on Amazon Prime, along with the first time that, yes, I know, out of nowhere, even though they had the series deal with Netflix last year, they decided to go with Amazon for the Rebuilds films. Yeah.
I want to say it's a template for Jeff Bezos' next project.
Oh boy, I hope not. Yes, Jeff Bezos is working on human instrumentality. It's gonna happen. Anyways, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. So yeah, so finally all 4 films are available in one place for people in the United States to watch them. The fourth one also internationally is available on Amazon Prime, so everybody can see it. It was released theatrically earlier in the year in March. So it is a 2021 film, no matter how you shake it. So I decided, well, I guess, sure, for podcast stuff, I'm sure maybe there's people out there that want to hear about this. So I'll do the work. And since I had already watched the series and End of Ava last year, I at least had the groundwork set to watch these Rebuild films. So I watched them all in a series about 4 days. Ooh, that was a lot.
That's putting it lightly.
So the thing is I can't really talk about the last one without getting into a lot of spoilers. So I'm going to try just to be general here. Is it different than the original series? Yes. Starting with the second Rebuild film, it basically, the plot is going the way you think it's going to go, or the way that it did before, and it branches off at the end of 2. And then 3 is completely different. 3 is completely like nothing in 3 happened in the series. And then so 4 picks up where that left off, basically finishes that version of the story that 3 is now telling. I think fans of the original one will appreciate a lot of the winks and nods to the original series. I think there's a lot of things that happen in this that are almost indecipherable unless you know stuff that happened in either the series or the previous movie. So maybe don't go into this completely fresh, or if you do, maybe read a synopsis of what happened in those. But then you might miss a lot of the visual stuff. Does it does it tell as much of a compelling story as a series that actually had like 26 episodes to breathe does? That's up for debate. I think that it does cover a lot of the same ground, but the way that it tackles stuff about like mental health is very different. In fact, it doesn't even really touch the same kind of themes about depression and relationships that really the first series did really focused in on. And I think largely it's because the creator is in a different, happier, arguably, place than he was back when he apparently made that, which was a very dark time in his life. He says it as much in interviews that he's done. But is it cool to look at? Absolutely. There's some really cool visual stuff happening, which has always been a hallmark of the series. It's a really good looking movie when it wants to be. There's some very pointed segments in this movie that look bad that I now, I guess, after doing some reading, look bad on purpose, which is an interesting move. And yes, it's very, very anime. So if none of this seems like it's your thing, then hey, it's probably not your thing. But if you watch the previous Eva films, if you've even watched the rebuild films up to now, well, you got to see how it ends, right? And it does end. There's a sense of finality here that is probably the best part of it. So you get to the end and you feel like things have been wrapped up. And I think there is a conversation to be had whether or not it is better than the original work. I don't necessarily think so, but I think that it's a unique opportunity for art. In a way, it's kind of like the rebuild films are like the Taylor's version of anime, where it was like a creator being like able to look back at the thing they made and was like, hey, but what if I did it slightly different for the person that I am now? So a lot of the conversation I had when Fearless came out earlier this year about like that being kind of interesting in like an artistic kind of point of view, you could say that a lot of those points apply here. It's very cool that we're allowed to have two versions of the same kind of idea that are different and be able to dissect why they're different and what that means about the creator and what that means about how art is just different from 1995 to 2021. So I think it's an interesting, really compelling thing. If you can get past the awful fan service and the unnecessary sexualization of these 14-year-olds, if you can get past that big hump, which I'm sure a lot of people can't, but if you can, I think there's something to it, and I'm glad that it exists, and it's definitely interesting. So yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting experiment, but your mileage may vary, I guess is what we'll say here.
It's interesting that you bring up that it's a 2020 reboot in a sense.
Right.
Because something similar is happening with, well, I haven't mentioned on the podcast, but Digimon right now is getting its own 2020 reboot.
Yes.
Following the films that they just did over the past couple of years with Digimon Try. That these artists, I mean, even if you want to say to an extent, even Dragon Ball Super.
Oh, yes. That's a good example of the same idea.
Yeah. Is going back to your original ideas in canon and learning from it and making new stories from it.
In a way, even Pokemon did it with Journeys. Like in Japan, that thing's just called Pokemon because they wanted it to feel like a complete reset. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting that we're seeing this trend right now in this decade with these anime creators being like, looking back at the thing they created and was like, I don't know, let's start this over again and like rethink it. And like kind of course, I mean, Ava was doing it back in 2007, to be fair. So maybe it started this trend in a way, like started these creators to maybe rethink about how they wanted to do their franchises moving forward.
I mean, hell, Cowboy Bebop.
I mean, they're doing that live action thing.
Live action. Akira live action coming.
Yeah. So yeah. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting way of approaching it. And I mean, is it not too dissimilar to the reboot crazy Hollywood that we've experienced the last few years? Not too different, but I feel like there's a bit, but you have to consider it's like, where does the line between, are we doing this for a cash grab or are we doing this to actually make a creative statement? And, you know, that line can be blurry sometimes. So like as long as they're going on into it in good faith, then I think it's fine. And I think it's an interesting way of approaching art. So yeah, that was
So interesting. Mileage may vary. Probably best. So question: if you didn't watch the series but only watched the films,
go back and watch the series. Is I hate to say that because it's a big time investment, but watching the series is important to understand a lot of what's going on here, both plot wise and visual signifier wise. You're going to see a lot of shit that doesn't make any sense unless you saw that original series. And there's no way a synopsis, I think, will do enough work for you to really get it in the way that I would say. So yeah, it sucks because basically that's telling me in order to watch this 2.5 hour movie, you have to watch let's say 13 hours of the show plus 2 hours of a film, and then you can watch, and then also let's see, an hour and a half plus 2 hours plus another an hour and a half. So whatever math that is, it's a lot of hours.
right? I have the same problem with the upcoming My Hero Academia film,
Yeah.
where you have to watch the anime plus the 2 other movies that came out during it, which may or may not actually fit in the timeline.
Right, which may not be canon, but
Which may not be
hey,
canon by the time we get to the third movie, which may or may not be canon by then.
Anime has a lot of stuff in common with getting into comic books, I think, in a way,
Yeah.
where if you feel like you want to get the entire context, it requires a lot of work.
Right.
So, yeah. So I guess viewer beware. Anyway, on that note, let's stop talking about movies and let's start talking about television. And we always start talking about television with the Sports Corner.
All right. And we have congratulations.
We do have congratulations because Taylor, Michigan has won the Little League World Series championship against Hamilton, Ohio.
Unfortunately, even though they're only 3 hours away, they both have to travel 4 hours to go play in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? Meanwhile, though, I'm assuming this is a related story here.
Oh, no, this next story is probably the biggest sports story.
Okay, so what's happening here? Because you don't specify what sport is happening.
Okay, high school football.
Thank you. So usually when you see high school football teams represented on television, they exist. Well, apparently that wasn't the case this week.
So this past weekend was high school football kickoff. ESPN made a bunch of deals across the nation to showcase some of these high school schools, with their, let's say, top prospects talent. Well, as a way to kick off the upcoming football season with high school football this week, or the past week, college football this week, and then the NFL the following week. 3 weeks of football.
Yeah. Well, it just so happened one of these teams that showed off on ESPN called Bishop Sycamore is allegedly not real. Apparently, is being alleged to have lied to ESPN to get on national television.
Yes, their opponent was IMG, one of the top recruiting schools in the nation. I think like all of their over half of their players have scholarships, multiple scholarships to D1 schools, D1 colleges. Bishop Sycamore claimed the same. But wait, it gets weirder. Bishop Sycamore has only existed for 2 years. Bishop Sycamore's last year never won a game, got outscored 257 points to 47. Bishop Sycamore, oh, by the way, it gets weirder. Bishop Sycamore apparently also played a game on the Friday night before. So they played on Friday night, had 2 days rest or a day's rest, and played on Sunday night against IMG. But wait, it gets weirder. The head coach for Bishop Sycamore has an arrest warrant out for him.
What? Oh, okay.
Oh, but wait, it gets weirder. The players at Bishop Sycamore don't even go to Bishop Sycamore. Apparently, some of the players are graduates, JUCO players, junior college players.
Oh.
But wait, it gets better or it gets weirder because Bishop Sycamore ultimately lost that game 44-7, meaning that even if these were junior college players,
they're awful.
They still got beat by a bunch of
high schoolers,
16 and 15-year-old high schoolers.
How did this happen? How did they pull this off?
So ESPN does not schedule these games. A marketing firm schedules these games for them.
Got it.
Apparently, when ESPN tried to reach out to Bishop Sycamore to get some kind of data or updated roster for their broadcast, Bishop Sycamore ignored them and did not return phone calls and did not deliver any type of paperwork until 2 hours before the game. So they could not verify anything. But wait, it gets weirder. No, that doesn't. I don't think it can get weirder than that. But
no, that's pretty much, we've reached peak weird.
Yeah.
So is there going to be any sort of repercussions here, or is it like, is there anybody punished here? Like what?
Bishop Sycamore is like the weirdest headline in sports right now.
Yeah,
I felt like we could not talk about it.
Yeah, that's
we could not talk about it.
Right. Well,
so yeah, if you want, so I know you like your rabbit holes. Look up Bishop Sycamore and go down the fun journey that is, does this school actually exist?
Wow. Okay. Well, on that note, the rest of sports this week, but not nearly as, conspiratory. First up, you're going to have to tell me who Quinn Ewers is.
Remember at the beginning of August when I said that there was a quarterback who forwent his senior year of high school?
Right, yes.
Into Ohio State.
The Ohio State. Yes.
This is him, Quinn Ewers.
Okay. Well, he's in the news this week because he signed some deals. He's making some bank. He signed a deal with GT Sports Marketing worth $1.4 million and received a new F-150 truck from a kombucha company worth $50,000.
Note that he is a redshirt freshman who has not played a snap in college.
Right.
But already has a $1.4 million deal.
Already making bank.
On the back of that, starting today, September 1st, in California, high school or college athletes can get paid for their name, image, and likeness. NIL law goes into effect today in California.
Yeah.
So college athletes can officially be paid for their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah. So get ready.
Yep. I expect like big deals to come out of this starting this weekend, if not by next week, or at least the end of the month.
Yeah.
But yeah. If this Quinn Ewers kid is at 1.4 for never playing a snap, imagine what like quarterback at USC, whoever he is.
Oh yeah. Whoever that is, who could say?
Yep.
Well,
the who's who of players.
Exactly. No, literally the who's who.
Yeah. Who's who? Who's what? Who's it?
All right. Well, moving out of college football into professional football. Help me out here. What exactly did Urban Meyer say to get an investigation by the Players Association?
Urban Meyer said that he took vaccination status into account when making final roster cuts.
I see.
Now, you're not supposed to do that.
According to the NFL.
According to the NFLPA, in which a deal was struck between the Players Association and the NFL, that whether or not a player is vaccinated should not determine their status on a team.
I see.
That being said, it is of note that Cam Newton, who is unvaccinated and has probably spoken out about it, currently not on a team. He got let go by the Patriots. But Bill Belichick was smart enough to say, he's just not going to be our backup. We're just going with a new quarterback.
Right. So if he had said literally anything but, hey, I did it because of vaccination status, he would have been fine and nobody would have batted an eye.
Well, yeah, because that's Bill Belichick. He knows what to say. Whereas Urban Myers, who's a new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars,
right,
and new to the NFL system,
yeah,
basically flat out said, yeah, we take vaccination status into consideration.
Of course.
Because any time that a team doesn't play, it's just going to end up into a forfeit this year.
Important to note here that this is in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes.
Where there is quite an issue right now with the lack of vaccination.
Right. And just in Florida, the state in general.
Yes.
But yeah, Urban Myers is in current hot water. And as much as I say, hey, maybe we should just go get vaccinated, this is exactly what the NFLPA is there for.
Right.
To protect the players.
Right.
Even though you think protecting the players would mean getting everyone vaccinated.
Yeah, this is a weird line. You're right. Is because it's like, well, as much as we'd like this to be a vaccinated only zone, the Players Association is calling the shots here.
Right. And they are literally doing their job. They're there to protect the players' jobs.
Calling the shots. Get it?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. You got it.
I caught it. I got the jab.
You got it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway. Interesting nonetheless. But yeah. Maybe don't, just like, hey, get your shots, but like also maybe be strategic about how you say these things.
Well, he's a new head coach. So
right. It's learning.
He was bound to slip up. It was only a matter of time.
Yeah.
That being said, we won't talk about football a whole lot other than next Thursday is the start. There is no preseason game this upcoming week.
Right.
Next Thursday is the start of football on 9/9.
Proper. So yes, next week we might have some news about that. All right, let's move on. Our last story here in sports. You're gonna have to explain this to me because is this a typo?
No, this is not a typo.
It could have been a typo.
I mean, it could be a typo. But the Los Angeles Lakers have secured their roster for the upcoming season. And they include a bunch of names from the 2012 All-Star game.
Oh, is that on purpose?
I mean, yes, because technically they're all All-Stars in their own right.
So people were just picking up on the parallels here and be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. So not only do they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but they also picked up Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, and Rajon Rondo.
So this is going to feel like a nostalgia play for a decade ago, like what the NBA was almost a decade.
So you know how some people say that, like, after you make it big in baseball, you go to the Yankees to basically get your paycheck and retire?
Yes.
That's what's happening here.
Right.
You're going to the Lakers to get your paycheck and retire.
Well, congratulations to all of them.
Yeah, congratulations to all of you. You're now a Laker, but also get out of the league.
Make room for other
Make
people.
way for the young guns.
It's like people trying to be a librarian and all the old ass librarians won't retire. Same deal.
Well, yeah, because you can't have sexy librarians. You got to have the old librarians.
Anyway. All right, that's it for sports this week, unless you have anything else to add.
Of course I do, but not enough to talk about it here.
Sure. All right. Well, let's move on then to keep our pace going here as we move into our first television story this week, which is all about our old friend, the Nielsen rating system.
And by old, we do mean old, as they've been around for literal decades.
So if you're not sure what Nielsen's is, they're an industry organization decided to that basically keeps track of the ratings for television programs. And of course, as you probably imagine, that has changed over the years as we've kind of moved off of the traditional set-top box kind of approach of everybody watches the same stuff on TV to more of a broad definition of ratings. This including DVR recordings and now maybe streaming.
Yep.
I don't know.
Video on demand.
So things have gotten complicated. Well, they've agreed to cancel an agreed upon hiatus for its support of Nielsen's local TV efforts as well, considering that TV networks have alleged earlier this year that Nielsen actually changed their protocols during the coronavirus pandemic, resulting in an undercounting of the actual TV audience. Quote, "We have become increasingly concerned with inaccuracies and irregularities in the data reported by Nielsen," said Disney's ad sales unit for one. "The decision will affect Nielsen ratings starting in mid-September. While the company's measurement will still be able to be utilized, it will, for an undetermined period of time, operate without a sort of seal of approval by the industry that actually uses it. And that could give advertisers and TV networks impetus to seek alternate means of counting their audiences." So are we looking at the potential end of the Nielsen's reign as the rating system?
We already see that end in terms of streaming, with everyone having their own streaming service, meaning they could look directly at their numbers and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite work the same way for cable because everyone
No.
has different types of cable out there. So they need some sort of overarching way of counting viewers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Nielsen's is, the overarching way of counting viewers. But we're no longer in a cable age, we're in a digital age, where I'm sure cable companies easily have access to said information. Now, company like, say, Comcast, which is under Universal, may have an inside track to these numbers.
Yes. Because yes, it's very important that you mention that, because the other thing that changed was not only how we watch our programming, but who makes it and where it airs. What's happened is, because of consolidation that previously was not allowed, you have content creation companies owned by the distribution companies. And you're right, that may be a problem if we're looking at counting. We can't account for bias.
It's a problem that has been growing, especially over the past 10 years, 15 years, with streaming coming up and video on demand and DVRs. But Nielsen has found a way to counter that because they have access to set-top boxes.
Right.
Now you can watch TV anywhere. You don't need to sit in front of an actual TV to watch TV. Watch on your computer, on your phone, on your tablet, on a plane, on the go, in a box, with a fox.
On a plane, but yeah, so I guess maybe it would be interesting. I don't know if our audience includes some Nielsen families out there, but hey, if you're out there, send us an email. Let us know how you're counting Nielsen ratings these days. How does it even work in this age?
Right. If so many channels out there, how do you even keep track?
Is there an app? Like, do you enter the app? Like, I watch this show, this song. Like, how does it work?
They just need to get with Google and put the ads in front of like the YouTubes. Like,
yeah,
did you watch this?
Yeah,
like this week.
Survey.
Pick one show you watched this week.
Well, interesting to see, and yeah, that could be a major change in something that's kind of been a standard for the last forever of television.
Yeah, like when you talk about TV, you talk about Nielsen ratings, and
right, yeah,
to see that possibly go away.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, a television show that has been, I guess, a hotbed for some ratings conversation is Jeopardy. And it's a show that we've talked about a lot over the last few weeks, and we have yet another update for you.
Week.
Yes. The story of Mike Richards just keeps getting more and more ridiculous, as Sony has now decided to fire Mike Richards from his executive producer role as well on Jeopardy, as well as his role on Wheel of Fortune, its sister program. This of course follows his oust as a host of the show, which we talked about last week. An internal memo to staff explains that Richards would depart effective immediately. Here's the quote: "We had hoped that when Mike stepped down from the host position at Jeopardy, it would have minimized the disruption and internal difficulties. That clearly has not happened. This, of course, echoes the sentiment of the memo that came out after he was ousted as host, which more or less said that it was because of these disruption and internal difficulties that they had no choice but to pick another host.
Right. This is also after an op-ed in the New York Times.
Right.
About the question being, why is Mike Richards still in charge of Jeopardy?
Yes. So yes, as we reported last week, his hosting tenure lasted just 1 day of production, with Mayim Bialik tapped to host for at least the next 3 weeks, as a new round of guest hosts will come in, still yet to be named. So, editor's note, just really quick. Since last week when we were praising Mayim Bialik, I have come across some evidence that maybe we should not be praising her as much as we have.
Yes, the internet is quick on this.
Yes, aren't they? So it looks like some people dug up some comments that she made about maybe some questionable opinions about COVID that maybe have lessened how I think about her a little bit, and some larger questionable comments that she made just about medicine and health in a big picture way. So I'm gonna maybe walk back media boat approval of her a little bit and just say, hey, you know, do your research, take with a grain of salt what these people are saying, and maybe we'll get an even better person to host the Daily Show.
Jeopardy fans are vocal.
Yes, turns out. And Sony's finding this out the hard way this year.
Yes. I mean, everyone loved Jeopardy. I think we all knew everyone loves Jeopardy. But this just shows how much people love Jeopardy. It's a staple of everyone's lives. And
yes,
you know, if the fan base had its way, LeVar Burton would be the host tomorrow.
Well, yeah.
That's a bad choice.
I think it's a bad choice. But hey, maybe there's somebody that nobody's even thought about that would be a perfect fit for this.
I saw Twitter polling for YouTubers to go out and host.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm saying I think I've moved my.
Not that we're on YouTube, but like actual science people who do science and educational videos on YouTube.
Or just go do the Hail Mary, literally get Aaron Rodgers.
You know what? You call up Kanye West. You call up Snoop Dogg.
Sure.
You find out their management for holographic technology and just use holographic Alex Trebek.
Oh no, that'd be too sad.
He has recorded hundreds of thousands of episodes of Jeopardy. His voice is everywhere. You can make it happen.
Too depressing. Too sad.
Never left.
No, I don't think people would be happy.
I'm not talking about like animatronic, like House of
I know
Black
what you're talking about. Regardless, too sad. I don't think we're ready for that. All right, let's move on out of this story and talk about something you watched. Much lighter fare. I would be safe to say.
Super light.
So yes, our weekly our Disney Plus correspondent returns.
Yes. So new Disney Plus drops today, and the new thing today was Doug Days. Doug being the dog from Up, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's Pixar tech devs showing off their new stuff.
All right.
In Up related shorts called Doug Days, about Doug, the dog, in his new life post Up with Carl in their new home and being a dog and doing what dog does. But because the collar allows him to speak, you get the hilarity of what the dog acts and what the dog says.
It's a time honored tradition. It's a common thing of like, hey, if a dog could speak, what would a dog say? And it's always ripe for comedy.
Yep. And it's always like you're in your backyard, like, well, I wonder what my dog's looking at. I wonder what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to ponder that. Doug Days kind of gives it to you. Now it's 6 episodes. It's extremely short. They're all devs for different directors, and it's basically it works as Pixar's way of using new talent and finding new creatives within their own company to be promoted.
Okay.
We just get the benefit of watching the end product.
Right. Yeah.
But
is it
fun.
Is it does it have a lot of winks and nods toward the movie Up, or is it kind of its
The
own thing?
opening does,
Okay.
but but the main characters are Carl and Doug.
Sure.
I mean, it's them until the last episode.
Mhm.
At last short.
Sure.
Then like you have a bunch of voices, but before that, it's just the two of them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fine. It's fun.
Yeah,
If you
sounds
miss
fine.
Up, if you want to watch Ed Asner or listen to Ed Asner.
Yeah.
Hmm.
This will probably be the last. Yeah, I guess this is it, huh?
Yep.
We'll get there
We'll get there.
in just a second. Before we do, we have cancellations and renewals to talk about. But quick.
One last thing.
Yes.
I've been watching Ultimate Surfer, the surfing competition on ABC. It's
You know what that
surfing.
is? Yeah, it's surfing. You know what it is.
That's all it is.
About it.
It's surfing.
Right? Professional surfing. You want
It's
to see cool
surfing.
surfing?
It's a competition.
Cool
It's called
surfing.
Ultimate Surfer.
There you go.
That's the premise.
That's the premise. Now let's move on to cancellations and renewals. First up, who Run the World? Well, Stars does apparently, because Run the World is getting a second season. Kevin Can F Himself, we talked about that show recently here on the podcast, getting a second season. Of course, how remains to be seen.
That's about a month removed from its season finale. So
Got it.
AMC finally
Breaking 'em
got
out.
rating information, I
Yeah.
guess.
I guess so.
Or they already looked at their books and said, yeah, we could probably do it.
Netflix is bringing back Cobra Kai for a fifth season. Also, the fourth season of Manifest, which will be its last.
This is the previously dead Manifest.
Yes, was
That
brought
was
back,
Killed
enjoyed-
off on NBC.
enjoyed success and Netflix viewing enough so that they were like, here, Netflix, make a fourth.
Yep. The Wonder Twins are back at it.
But as we mentioned, we have one death to talk about this week. Yes, Ed Asner, unfortunately, has left us, age 91. Actor famous for, oh man, do I even need to tell you? You know, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Lou Grant, but most recently in the minds of people who love the Doug days, Up, among other things. 7-time Emmy winner, president for a while of the Screen Actors Guild, just such a great guy, such a funny guy, just like always reliable to come in and do voice acting or cameo appearances. Just, man, just like what a just good dude. And
Super
so,
hilarious. Just
yeah.
overall great guy to be around.
Yeah.
That's a cornerstone that's going to be missed, but it's also
Age 91. I mean,
Yeah.
it was going to happen, but still, yes, a legend. Will be the end of the Emmys in memoriam 100%. Like,
on a lighter note though.
yes.
Betty White is still outliving all these guys.
That's true. That is true. So yes, but later this month, and like I said, I'm sure, yes, we will probably see an Emmy tribute to him, because just seminal important person when you talk about television.
Yep.
All right, let's move on and talk about some music, and I throw this over like a spiral football over to you.
And we start music with the Billboard, and we start the Billboard with the Hot 100, and staying hot this summer as we get into September is The Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber with Stay, the #1 song in
Still.
the country.
Still.
At number 2, Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran.
Yep,
Number
still.
3 is Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo.
Still.
At 4, Kiss Me More by Doja Cat featuring SZA.
Moving it up.
And moving up into the top 5,
Yes.
Industry Baby by Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow.
Took it a couple of weeks longer than we thought it would to get to the top 5, but here it is.
Yep, it kept chugging, and here it is.
Yes.
As for your albums chart, your Billboard 200, back at number 1, staying at number 1, still
Yes.
number 1,
Back at number 1.
back still. Some people say it's still on people's number 1 album chart. Sour by Olivia Rodrigo. That's what I forgot to mention.
Yes.
No, we were watching Hard Knocks this past week, and they played Olivia Rodrigo's Brutal in the middle of it. But they were specific in editing out any reference to
Sure.
it being a high school.
That's funny.
Like the line where she says, like, "Where's my teenage string?"
Yeah.
They dropped the audio, removed it
That's very silly.
just so they kept the phrase that God, it's brutal out here because it's the dog days of summer. At number 2, Trip at Night by Trippy Red. Number 3 is Soulfly by Rod Wave. At number 4, Planet Her by Doja Cat, dropping down a couple slots. And rounding out the top 5, Solar Power by Lord.
Yes.
Took
Yeah.
a tumble.
Just couldn't sustain. But hey, still there.
If you didn't like any of those albums, I'm sure we have new releases.
It's underneath the news. I put the news stories ahead of it for some reason.
We have new releases.
We do have new releases.
Including The Big Sleepover by Big Boy and Sleepy Brown.
Oh,
you see what they did there? The Big Sleepy
I see what they did.
We also have Mercury, Act 1 by Imagine Dragons. Yes, those Imagine Dragons.
I can't imagine those dragons.
You can never imagine those dragons?
No.
We also have Senjutsu by Iron Maiden. Yes, that Iron Maiden. Still kicking around. GG BB XX by Lanny. Sometimes I Might Be an Introvert by Lil Sims. Name of my album.
Sometimes.
How of my life. We also have The Ultra Vivid Lament. By Manic Street Preachers. I know it's Lament. But your big release of the week, the one that's probably going to hit number 1, assuming it actually releases, Certified Lover Boy by Drake.
Yeah. So I'm going to do what I did with the Lord album cover here and ask you if you've seen the album cover for this.
I have not. I've been staring at the blank Donda, which we'll talk about.
Donda. Before we talk about that, though, I want you to do a quick Google of Certified Lover Boy cover art. And I want to get your
boy cover.
Cover. I want to get your on-air opinion of what this thing is.
Is this baby mamas?
Yes.
Baby mama emoji.
Yes, for those who haven't seen it yet, it is the pregnant woman emoji. I'll say pregnant 12 person times emoji. Over though. Yeah, pregnant person emoji in different shades of skin color.
Different shirts as well.
Total of 12 and on a white background, and that's what this is. Apparently a artist that of some renown is responsible for this, because friend of the show Christy actually knew who this person was, and I was like, okay, because she's taking art classes, I guess. So he's like around, so I guess it's art. I don't know, you be the judge. But it does make you wonder what Drake is trying to insinuate here. The joke I saw very quickly in a comment was, wow, Pusha T said that he was hiding one child, but is he hiding 12?
I thought that was the thing, though, that he's hiding children.
Right. That was a thing. And then he finally revealed, like, oh, no, here's my son. And he came on stage with him at some award show last year. It was like a big deal. But now it seems a questionable choice to insinuate that there's more where that came from. I don't know. It might just be as simple as Drake bragging that he's had sex with a lot of women. But like Drake, we already kind of
verify once.
Yeah, like we can. Yes, exactly. Only a proof of one. But yeah. So I'm guessing like, but Drake, we already kind of figured that. Like, I don't know why you feel like you need to prove this to us. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted you to see that.
I am very more fond of Lil Nas X's take on it.
You've noticed this as well,
where they're all guys.
Yes, it's very funny.
I saw that on Twitter and I didn't get it.
Now you get it.
Is it because he's gay?
No, now you get it. But also,
get it.
Also, yes, that is not true. All right. So yeah, let's move on now. Now that that's out of our system.
All right, I gotta not look at this.
We'll talk more about Drake next week, unfortunately.
Right. But we have some big announcements to talk about this week.
We do.
So we didn't mention it at the beginning of the podcast, but it is worth noting. If you live in the South, there's no running from it. You can't hide from it. Hurricane Ida is around.
Yeah.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone in there who will be impacted by Hurricane Ida.
Yep.
Not just people's homes or people's livelihood, also people's jobs.
Yeah. So hang in there and stay safe.
Yep. And the hanging Chad on this semicolon is our first music story that is Bonaroo.
Yes.
So the music festival, which is scheduled to begin on Thursday, has been canceled as of Tuesday afternoon. The reason given was not COVID related, but rather due to the heavy rainstorms from Hurricane Ida. And the quote, "We are absolutely heartbroken to announce that we must cancel Bonaroo. While this weekend's weather looks outstanding, currently, Centeroo is waterlogged in many areas. The ground is incredibly saturated on our toll booth paths, and the campgrounds are flooded to the point where we are unable to drive in or park vehicles safely. We have done everything in our power to try to keep the show moving forward, but Mother Nature has dealt us a tremendous amount of rain over the past 24 hours, and we have run out of options to try to make the event happen safely and in a way that lives up to the Bonaroo experience. Please find ways to safely gather with your Bonaroo community and continue to radiate positivity during this disappointing time. We will see you on the farm in June of 2022.
Yeah, I thought this is an interesting story, considering that we have a cancellation that for once is not about COVID, but for a very legitimate reason. If you can't do what you need to do to put stuff on the stage or backstage, then you can't have a show.
Not just putting on a show, but making sure people are safe. Bonaroo is a campground, RVs and tents everywhere. If the ground is wet and you can't, and unstable, it can give way. That is terrible. If you can't drive on it and park and have secure parking, it's unsafe. You should not have a festival.
Yeah.
And this is the right call.
Right. It's the right call. Yeah, it is unfortunate for people who bought tickets, but hopefully they'll be refunded. So yeah, just another example of like, these things are so unpredictable and you never know what's going to happen. In this case, it was weather.
Yep. As for anyone who has flights out to Tennessee for Bonaroo, might be a quick time to either cancel or change or divert those flights.
Yes, indeed.
I was reading the Twitter feed on Tuesday night when it was announced that the people who were still there, all the not vendors, but the crew who sets up Bonaroo were still there. They were kind of trapped.
Right.
So they were having their own Bonaroo party, trying to make light of the situation.
Trying to, take advantage of being like kind of trapped for a little bit.
Like we can't go anywhere. So everyone pull your resources and let's just have one big party that we can. It looked fun, but at the same time,
it's not
when
the
you wake
situation.
up in the morning, you realize, I'm still here. I need to get out of here.
Right. So we hope them safe travels out of it when they can, when it's safe to do so. And and we hope that everybody involved in that weather, like you're saying, is remains safe. And it's rough.
Yep.
Speaking of rough,
we have updates.
Yes, our two 2021 stories.
Basically competing with each other.
They really are.
First up is the Brittany update.
Yes.
So Britney Spears' lawyer is keeping up his blistering attacks on her father, accusing father Jamie Spears of trying to extort $2 million in payments in exchange for stepping down from Britney's conservatorship. The attorney Matthew Rosengart, has been seeking since July to have Jamie Spears removed from his position of control over her finances. Earlier this month, Jamie Spears agreed that it would be best for him to step down from the conservatorship, saying he did not want a public fight with his daughter. However, he did not provide a timetable for his resignation and appeared to open the door to a negotiated resolution.
Mhm.
In a filing on Monday, Rosengart argued that Jamie Spears is seeking to use his leverage to compel his daughter's estate to pay $1.3 million in attorney's fees, $500,000 to Spears' former management company, as well as additional payments to Jamie Spears himself.
So yeah, this is a symbol of why when we talked about the story, I was trying to avoid framing it as a win, because clearly it's still not over, because he's going to try to figure out his way that if he is going to step down, that he's going to get paid for it. It was never in good faith, and I kind of figured it wasn't.
Right. It's something that we had brought up, that it was a vocal contribution on his part. But
Yeah.
until something physically actually happened or was court ordered, it was as good as
No. Yeah.
what's the phrase? Like white out on a paper.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like you have to, unless you physically, unless we actually hear that he's been completely removed, he's not going anywhere. He's going to make sure of that, because he's made it very clear that he doesn't trust Brittany. And so, yeah, this is far from over, as we said last time we talked about it. So, yeah, we continue to hope that Brittany eventually gets her wishes.
Brittany battle continues.
Yeah.
Speaking of battling,
Lovely. Well, this is a potentially positive spin on what's been a really rough story.
yeah. I mean,
We'll
at least
see.
he's trying.
Yeah.
By he, I mean, DaBaby.
Yes.
He has met with a group of 9 U.S. HIV organizations, quote, to discuss HIV facts and share personal stories of living and thriving with HIV. The organizations had called for a meeting in an August 4th open letter to the rapper, whose controversial homophobic comments in recent weeks led to the cancellation of multiple concert appearances and a firestorm of criticism from other artists. His attempts at public apologies seemed half-hearted at best, and he deleted the most detailed one of his social media accounts after a few days. But in a statement on Tuesday, the organizations wrote, quote, "The open letter to DaBaby was our way to extend him the same grace each of us would hope for. Our goal was to call him in instead of calling him out. We believed that if he connected with Black leaders living with HIV, that a space for community building and healing could be created. We are encouraged. He swiftly answered our call and joined us in a meaningful dialogue and thoughtful educational meeting."
Of course, the thing that's not here is, of course, DaBaby's reaction or DaBaby's statement following these things. No, he has not said anything about this to my knowledge, at least according to the record. And until he does, I mean, this doesn't count as an apology. This means that, like you said, he's doing some work. It means that he at least agreed to come meet with these people. That's good. It's a sign of wanting to do better and wanting to learn. But if he's still not giving a real apology, and if he's still not saying anything about it otherwise than the statements he's already made on the record, then I think we're still at square one. He needs to, if he's going to do the work, he has to say, he also has to learn from it. Like we have to see the result of him learning, which I guess is the next step. So until that happens, I don't know, DaBaby. We're only halfway there.
Well, I can tell you for certain that Universal Music is still distancing itself from DaBaby.
Yeah.
Even when one of their big artists releases a song with DaBaby on it.
Is this your segue?
Yes, it is.
Oh, are we really going to talk about this first? You have to. I guess we have to get through the gristle to get to the meat, huh?
Yeah. So, big story that came out this past weekend is Kanye West dropped Donda.
Yeah, finally.
Then, finally, after he did a concert at Soldier Field and literally built his hometown house on the 50-yard line of Soldier Field. Then the album dropped. Well, it didn't drop on Kanye's part. It was released by Universal Music.
Right.
To which Kanye, like an hour after it was released, immediately put out a statement on his Instagram saying, I do not condone this release. Then, a few hours later, he put out another statement asking where Jail 2 was. I think that's what the track was called. Where Jail 2 was. Because that song had both DaBaby and Marilyn Manson on the track, but was pulled by Universal Music because it had Marilyn Manson and DaBaby on the track, both of which are still in hot water over recent allegations.
Yes.
I mean, DaBaby's not so much an allegation because he flat out did it.
Yeah, well, yes. And then Marilyn Manson, a much more serious allegation, I think, than anything DaBaby's been involved in.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. Yes, you're right. It was kind of a big story, but the real big story is that this album is, I guess, real and it's out and you can listen to it. And it seems like, according to my notes here, is that you did that? You did this? You actually did it.
Yes. I went through all 145 minutes, an hour and 45 minutes of this.
Yeah, it's not 145 minutes.
No, it's 105 minutes. I was trying to do the math, but then it came back 45. 105 minutes, hour 45.
Yeah.
I had to take a break and like listen to this thing in 3 separate like chunks.
This is something that, like how theme parks used to give you a shirt in the gift shop at the end saying I survived, like Jurassic Park or whatever. I think everybody who survives the hour and 45 minutes of this thing should have a shirt I survived Donda, except it doesn't say that because it's just black and it's $1,000.
You're right, it is black because the album is just black.
All right, so I'll say real briefly before you can give me your thoughts about it. I wasn't going to listen to this, and then I was with Christy, and Christy was like, let's at least hear what a couple of these songs sound like. We listened to the intro of this thing, and then listened to the song after that for about, let's say, half of its runtime before skipping through a few songs. And then we got to another song, and she was literally like, this sound hurts my ears, and so we stopped listening to Donda. So yeah, go ahead. Tell me what the rest of this thing is.
The best way to sum up Donda is by that first track. Donda, Donda, Donda.
Yeah.
Donda, 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 Donda.
Yes.
He says Donda a lot in this album.
Well, I mean, it is a tribute to his mother.
Right.
Donda.
Yeah.
To be fair.
There's no two ways going about that. It is a tribute from Kanye West to his mom.
And I think I want to establish before we continue, nothing against Donda West. It seems like she had a very a big impact on his life. She seemed like a very, very good person. She doesn't seem like unlike Kanye, has not made any in her life, did not make any questionable, did not have any questionable opinions, did not do any questionable things. It seemed like she's a stand-up person and is deserving of praise and deserving of respect. And I'm glad that Kanye is honoring her in this way. But continue.
But yeah, it's interesting at best.
Okay.
So the last album he put out,
right,
aside from Jesus is King, which is the gospel album.
Yeah, that was a gospel thing.
Is Yay.
Right.
Yay in 2018.
Yay.
2017? 2018.
Oh God, was it really that long ago? Okay.
It was 5 years ago.
Oh boy.
Something like that. So that was his last album. This, I want to say, is more in line with his previous album, Jesus.
You're skipping Life of Pablo, but okay.
Everyone skips the Life of Pablo.
It's fine. That album was fine.
So yeah, Yeezus, I think, was the one that had like black skinhead on it and like,
Yes.
oh my God, yeah.
He's
So
at the time kind of controversial because it was him experimenting with a lot of like abrasive sounds, very influenced by noise music, was very like a different kind of vibe, very oppressive, and short. It was at the time his shortest record, only about 10 tracks. And it was a statement record. It was basically Kanye saying like, well, I don't make just hip hop anymore. I don't make rap anymore. I make these weird art songs. So you're saying that he dabbles a bit in that kind of vibe here?
Yeah, he dabbles in that kind of vibe where it's very abrasive, but also very direct and, dare I say, lyrically gymnastics with it, as Kanye tends to do. But instead of that more hard, abrasive sound from Yeezus, he takes from the God is King, more gospel approach, and it's more echoey, it's more angelic, it's more easy to listen to. I enjoyed this album to a point. I enjoyed about the first 5 tracks of this album, especially when like the different artists started coming on. I thought it was a great introduction. And then it just kept going. And then it kept going. And that's why I had to stop and listen to this thing in chunks.
Yeah.
Because it just kept going.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily kept going. It is unnecessarily long. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was more, thank God it's done, rather than, oh my God, like that's a masterpiece.
Right. And that's the risk you always take when something this length. And also it's the risk you take when you do what Kanye did here and repeat several tracks at the end of the runtime with different versions of them. Basically, like, here's version 2 of this with a different guest verse. And it's like you're stretching the audience's listening ability there if they're going to hear the same song they already heard again. It's like another thing I will say is it seems like your opinion about the guest verses is consistent with the critical consensus. It seems like everybody's saying the same thing, is like, this is really mediocre on Kanye's part, but the guest verses are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like the guest verses. And then I like the production on it. Like, it's top-notch production. Like, I mean, Kanye is a producer.
Yeah, it's Kanye. He was a producer first, you know, it's very much his imprint. But yeah, it's a marathon is what it sounds like. And when you finish a marathon, you're exhausted.
Yeah. Having not like looked at like who was on it, as I was listening, I was like, oh, I know that voice, or oh, they're on this album. And I like that. I mean, some of it can be taken, that surprise can be taken away. Like if you look at like featuring and who's it by, like beforehand.
Yeah.
But I kind of enjoyed the surprise element of listening to it.
Yeah. And that's what I think that you get out of, that's, I guess, the valuable thing you get out of something that's this long, is that it's like digging, it's like in a mine almost, for those gemstones. You're trying to find the like diamonds in the rough there throughout the rest of it.
Broken clock is right twice a day. A blind pig finds a truffle.
Yeah, I guess so. Whatever metaphor you want to spin. But yeah, so I guess the question I have is, as a whole, do you think this is necessary? Do you think that people who have liked Kanye in the past should try this thing for maybe the few nuggets they can find of good music here? Or is it just overwhelming in its length and not maybe worth people's time?
100 minutes is unnecessarily long, no matter which way you spin it.
Yeah.
Especially for an album. At like, unless it's a musical.
Right.
Doesn't need to be that long. Break this thing up.
Yeah. And also, I mean, and then kind of coupled onto that is like, do we want to reward Kanye for doing something that's, from what I gather from the consensus, is just okay?
I mean, it's okay, but it also harkens back, like I said, almost 10 years ago to Yeezus.
Right.
So does that mean that over the past 10 years, he hasn't
He's
really
learned
put out
nothing.
anything good?
No, and I think that's a point that other people have brought up too, is that it seems like there was a time where Kanye was the trend setter. Now it appears as if he's both chasing who he used to be as well as chasing current trends.
Mhm.
There's a lot of songs on this that seem like, from what I've heard, again, I have not listened to the entirety of this thing and probably won't, but it seems like a lot of people are saying is like he's just kind of borrowing other people's beats here and not really blazing a trail anymore. He's gotten to the zone, no pun intended, about where he doesn't feel like he needs to lead the pack anymore. So it'll be interesting going into the next few weeks and months here, because as we mentioned, Drake's new record comes out next week. Yep. And then Kendrick Lamar recently in the news for talking about his final record for Top Dog. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have Drake and Kendrick records to compare against this thing very soon here. It's going to be interesting to see kind of the three like names when you think of 2010s hip hop against each other again.
It's funny because we literally just talked about this last week with Lord and Solar Power.
We did, yes.
How stacked it is for that kind of music.
Yeah.
That everyone's putting on an album.
So yeah, I don't know if Kanye can stay relevant. I don't think
it holds up by the end of the year.
Probably not. I don't think so. I think a lot of people will forget about this thing.
I say you will get your singles, your hits out of this, especially with the upcoming football season. It will definitely be used in a lot of promos. But as an album, and that's how we look at these, we don't look at these individually.
Right.
As an album, it's not going to be for everybody.
Your mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary very heavily.
Thinking earlier today, we're almost to the point where we need to redo the patented media vote scale.
Yeah.
We need to have pass, your mileage may vary, or see it / listen to it. I think that's probably where we're at right now. I think the middle used to be stream it, but I think we can, now that we're in the streaming era, I think we can remove stream it from all of the categories.
Yeah, just change it to mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary. Because hey, you know what? This might be really exciting for some people. There's stuff on here that people
will like.
Sure.
There's people that are praising this, that love it.
But you have to dig there. You have to dive into the deep end to get to it. And I don't think everybody is going to be willing to do it.
Right. And even then, it's the singles and not the full album.
Yeah. So there you go. Now, at long last, we can talk about good albums. I have been so excited to talk about these two records that I could barely hold myself together this week. I have tried to do the hard sell on one of these, especially to a lot of people this week, because I think it's that good. It might be, in fact, I can say pretty confidently, it is my new favorite record of the year.
Okay.
Which one is it, though?
Yes. And say that it's Chvrches.
No. Surprise. It's the other one.
It's the other one. So, do you want to talk about Chvrches or the other one?
I need to talk about Halsey. We need to talk about Halsey.
Okay.
Did you listen to this?
Yes, I did.
How'd you feel?
I got to the same problem I listened to the album 3 times. And I got to the same problem. After Lilith, which I think is the 5th track on there.
Around there. Somewhere.
Around 4th or 5th.
It's pretty early actually in there.
After Lilith, it gets too poppy for me. Especially from the beginning. I love the beginning.
That is not the take that I thought you're going to have. Wow, okay.
I love the beginning. I loved where it opened. It's great storytelling. I love the first 4 or 5 tracks on this thing. And like I said, I listened to this thing 3 times. And same point, right after Lilith, it kind of got too poppy for me.
Wow, okay.
Not in a bad way. I thought we were going somewhere else with this.
It's funny because that exact kind of thought process is why I really enjoyed this thing, is because you don't know where it's going. So roll back the tape a little. Remember the conversation we had about Olivia Rodrigo's Sour. One of the most exciting things about Sour for me was that Olivia Rodrigo, even though this is her debut album, was basically taking some risks. She was willing to be like, hey, if I want to write a pop punk song and a piano ballad and, whatever else you want on the same record and still pull it off, I'm going to do it, and I can do it because no one's really telling me I can't.
She wasn't pigeonholing herself on her debut record.
We are entering an era in where these mainstream pop acts are feeling more brave to just do whatever the hell they want, do a complete genre pivot out of nowhere. I mean, we saw Taylor Swift have success with this last year. We're seeing it everywhere. And so what Halsey does, I'm going to note real quick. Halsey, according to their Twitter account, goes by either she, her pronouns or they, them pronouns. I just want to address that. It seems like officially a lot of the reviews that I've read recently have been referring to them as they and them. So I'm going to choose in this recording also to refer to Halsey as they, them, just establishing that it seems like that maybe the preference that maybe they or their team has been out there saying. So that's what I'm going to choose to go with right now.
Right. I think, what's her name? Also went with they, them.
Well, then you already messed up.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of Demi Lovato, yes, Demi Lovato also recently has chosen to go by they, them pronouns. Anyways, so Halsey. So Halsey also has taken this opportunity to be like, hey, what kind of music do I want to make? Do I want to make like pop music that I've made in the past, like Media Boat favorite Manic from last year or 2 years ago, whenever that was. Mm-hmm. They decided, hey, like, why not change up a little bit and work with some of my musician heroes, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and just throw everybody a curveball. Make pop music, but make pop music that's been crafted by people who made industrial music and are famous for a very specific kind of sound. And the result is this weird amalgamation of so many different things. Like this album jumps from piano ballad in the intro to pop rock to R&B to industrial to it just goes, it hits so many different things. By the time that you're done with it, you're just like, wow, I feel like I just went on a roller coaster. Roller coaster of feelings, of vibes, of, and I think it all works. I think it all works really, really well. They're all pop songs underneath. I think there are different takes of this record that you can see, like, okay, I can see what they're doing. Like this could be a much more straightforward kind of thing. But the fact that they are either one, they are like trying to do things and experimenting with different things here, I think makes it a much more interesting record than it would have been if that they hadn't experimented in that direction. According to interviews, it's the thing that they've always wanted to make, which is kind of exciting in a way, because it's like finally giving somebody the tools and connections that they needed to make the music that's always been kind of circling around in their head. That's really exciting. It's a really exciting moment to be in. I really enjoyed this thing. I think that, like I said, I think it's probably my favorite thing I've heard all year, which I did not anticipate saying when this thing got announced. But I just think it's it's just so adventurous and so willing to take risks. Side note, I think that we may see this album not only on the album chart, although because Kanye did a Kanye, it may not be your number one as previously predicted. I think we're also going to see this in the Hot 100 as well, because I think there's a song on here that could be a huge hit. And you didn't get to it because it's at the end of the record.
Well, it's at the end. You expect me to stick around till the end?
Very funny.
I don't know, but I mean, I did like Halsey's last album. I'm not saying this is a bad album. I'm just saying that it's, like you said, it changes, which can be good or a bad thing. To me, it fell on the wrong side. To you, it didn't.
I think that the fact that it is such a variety of tones and a variety of sounds, that it's so interesting to me. It's just like this fascinating piece of what somebody can do when they're given complete freedom. So I pulled up, I think that I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God, which is probably the most
I
Nine
thought
Inch
that's what you were gonna say.
Nails. Yeah, it's probably the most Nine Inch Nails influenced song on the record. It's literally got a part that sounds like it became closer. Like, it's so good and so catchy that I think this is your radio single. I think that this has a chance of being very successful, which is not something you think of with such a big curveball of a record. I mean, it's very telling that music streaming services are referring to this as an alternative record and not a pop record.
Right.
It's so interesting that I think that we live in, and I think, again, speaking of Olivia Rodrigo, I think the fact that we can say that Good For You, which is ostensibly a Blink-182 song or a Paramore song, is still in the top 5 after all these weeks. I think that we live in a universe where now this song could be a number 1 hit and could be very successful.
I was gonna go with easier than lying, but yeah, sure. Let's go with I'm Not a Woman, I'm a God.
But that's the thing, right? Is that there's so many good songs here that try different things. I don't know. I like this whole thing. I think it's amazing production. I think great songwriting. I think Halsey's coming into their own. I think this is a statement that they're making here. I think that this moves the needle. This is like a golden hour Casey Musgraves move to me. This is the move where don't pigeonhole me in this genre. I'm whatever I want to be. And I think this might be a Grammy favorite too. I'm gonna throw my Grammy hat in the ring here and say that I think the Grammy race as it stands right now might be Halsey, Olivia, Casey when that thing comes out, Ed Sheeran probably, and maybe Kendrick if that thing comes out by the end of the year. I think it's that strong of a record. I think this thing's amazing. I think it's really good.
So it sounds like you're more on board, in love with this album than I am.
I think you should listen to the whole. If you listen to the entirety of Donda, listen to the entirety of this thing because it ends strong.
I'll go back to it. Like I said, I listened to it 3 times.
Just do it. Just push through.
Like, isn't that enough for you? I listened to it 3 times.
Because you said you topped out around like track 4. You're missing some really great stuff. She goes.
Like I said, everything past track 4 all kind of starts to sound very differently than what was at the beginning.
Well, like for instance, like "Girl Is a Gun" is a Grimes song out of nowhere. She just wrote a Grimes song. Then you asked for this interesting like shoegaze influence, bedroom pop kind of thing. And then after that, "Darling" is the kind of the acoustic ballad. And then after that, she gets dark again. And then after that, it's all of a sudden this like really sweet, like rock influence, like love song. And then there's this really
hear that like roller coaster tonal whiplash you're describing.
Yes, but that's why it works, in my opinion, is you ride the roller coaster because it's not just one giant loop, right? The loop is followed by other kinds of things because you can't just have one sugar rush the entire time. Variety is important. Anyway, I think it's very good. That's all I have to say.
No, now tell me how you really feel.
All right. Well, let's talk about the other record that we listened to. So did you listen to this as well? I'm assuming you did.
No, because Donda kind of took up all that time.
Oh, man. Because I gave you homework.
Yes.
And you failed to do it.
Out.
You failed to do your homework.
Like I said, if I didn't spend those 3 like chunks trying to listen to Donda.
All right. Well, in that case, I can't talk we won't talk as much as I wanted to about this thing. I was hoping to have a discussion about it.
We may talk about it in 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I'll have plenty of time.
You'll have plenty of time then. I guess what I will say then is that, hey, I got good news for people who liked Chvrches. Chvrches is back. And this record is, I want to say, pretty good and almost as good as their first 2. And I say almost here to hedge a little bit. The third record, which came out 2 years ago, is controversial in that it took them in a maybe too poppy direction for a lot of people. I thought it was fine. I just didn't like it as much as their first 2 records. I guess I should say, if you're not familiar with Chvrches, they write pop songs that are inflected with EDM style production value. So a lot of synth, a lot of really cool production tricks. But it's very much they're very at its core a pop band. and they don't shy away from that at all. This record is interesting because they take a little bit of, not so much of a turn that the third record did, but a little bit of a branch, and try to like incorporate a little bit more, like a little bit more of a guitar sound in it, and also have a little bit of a concept theming thing going on. As the name Screen Violence insinuates, it is kind of themed like a horror movie. It like uses a lot of like references and kind of vibe of like horror franchises. And it's a really interesting kind of take. And it's basically the lyrics are about like emotional reactions to things, whether it's being scared or whether it's being stressed out, or even singer Lauren Mulberry really talking about her reaction to her critics. So there's songs about the experience of being a woman in the music industry. There's songs about like being like criticized for what she wears, criticized for how she looks. It's a really introspective record at the same time as being this like return to this big broad sound that they had on their first two records. I think a lot of people will point out that some of the acoustic things, that some of the sounds, like the new sounds they experiment here, don't always work. Some of the hooks take a little bit to grow to really get. I think on one of the singles, California, it was a song that that totally missed for me the first time I listened to it, but then grew on me the next couple listens to it. Now I think it's a really interesting hook, but at the first time didn't immediately grab me. And I think that may be what a lot of people's reaction to this thing is the first round, is that and not as strong as the first couple of records. But I think give it some time. It's a grower. I think the opening track here, if you listen to anything, listen to that. Asking for a Friend. It is a reminder that when Chvrches is working on all cylinders, they can be incredible. So yeah, I had a really good time with it. I think it's definitely one of my favorite favorites, things that they've some of these songs are definitely some of my favorites that they've ever written. So hey, that means it's a pretty good time, and I recommend it. It's a good entry into the Chvrches discography too, if you're just coming in. So yeah, pretty good.
Sounds good. Like I said, I'll have like a whole 10 days.
Yeah.
To probably listen to it.
Exciting.
Did you listen to anything else?
Just not really important stuff. Just a couple of really quick hits. I listened to the Big Red Machine record. We talked about that briefly last week. It's the Aaron Dessner Bon Iver band. It's if you like how a lot of the production on Folklore and Evermore sounded, if you like Aaron Dessner's work with the National, you might like this. It's a little long, and it's a little kind of, I guess, toned down to the fact that some people might find it a little boring. I enjoyed my time with it, but it's not an absolute you must listen to this kind of thing. And I also listened to Glow On by Turnstile. Turnstile is a hardcore band. This is their most accessible thing. If you don't like hardcore, I think there's enough interesting music here to maybe give it a try and maybe enjoy what's happening here. But people in the scene, in the hardcore scene, are praising this thing like it's the second coming. This apparently, it's being called like a classic in that hardcore punk kind of, this wave of hardcore punk. So if you like that kind of thing, hey, you might love it. I just thought it was interesting, but I don't know if I'm going to return to it. So there you go.
I did listen to the first two singles released by Casey Musgraves.
I did too.
Star-Crossed and Justified.
Yes.
I'm ready to get my heart broken.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about the production, especially on Justified. I didn't like it. Sounded kind of muddy to me, but maybe in the context of the album, it'll work better. So I'm very excited to listen to that full thing when that comes out.
Yep, and that will be releasing not this Friday, but the next Friday.
Right.
On the 10th.
Cool beans.
Yeah, the 10th. All right. With that done, let's move on over to our last segment here, video games. Let's try and get to the end. We have lots of new releases this week, including
I just realized I didn't do it. These are last week's.
It's last week.
I skipped that step.
We already did No More Heroes.
Let me pull it up real quick to see if there's anything important. It'll just take a second here.
New releases. We just
Yeah, I didn't do it. Let's see. We have let's see if this is from the 1st to the 8th. Lake, which is coming out for Xbox Series X and Xbox One, as well as PC. That is this narrative-driven game where you're basically somebody returning to their hometown. Seems actually kind of cool. I might check that out. WRC 10 racing game. That's on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, and Switch. We have Kitaria Fables on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Switch, and PC. If you have it, you can play it. The Medium is getting its PS5 release this week as well. That was previously an Xbox Series S/X exclusive. Golf Club: Wasteland on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Family Trainer on Switch. Big Rumble Boxing: Creed Champions. I'm guessing this is related to the Creed films.
Yes.
That's on PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. We scroll down to the next week. Bus Simulator 21, which is probably what it says it is. PS4, Xbox One, PC. Fist, F-I-S-T, Forged in Shadow Torch for PS4 and PS5. Sonic Colors Ultimate, which is the remake of Sonic Colors. PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC for that one. And those are your new releases.
All right. With those out of the way, let's talk about A Strange Life We Have.
Yes.
Or rather, A Life is Strange.
This is technically a television story, but it's in video games because it's based on a video game.
Well, it's based off Annapurna's Life is Strange.
That's not Annapurna.
It is Annapurna.
No, it's not. They do not publish that game.
I thought they did.
It's a Square Enix joint, if you can believe it.
Well, I thought it was from Annapurna.
No. The Life is Strange games have always been published by Square Enix, developed by Don't Nod.
That's probably Don't Nod.
Yes.
So yeah, Life is Strange. The TV series is in the works.
Yes.
But the project is back in the news cycle as pop star Shawn Mendes is overseeing the show's music. But now, Anonymous Content, one of the production companies behind Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, has joined the production. The Hollywood Reporter says that Mendes, along with Andrew Gertler, will oversee the music as part of permanent content, while Joy Gorman, Weddles, and Zach Hayden will act as executive producers for Anonymous Content. Weddles was also an executive producer on 13 Reasons Why, which was an adaptation of the book of the same name.
So there's a couple things here. One, hey, Life is Strange TV show based on the first two games. That seems potentially interesting. It does seem like there's a lot of material there to be dug up for a show, a teen-centered show. Also, it's interesting that that they got people who made a successful teen show on Netflix to help the production here. Now, of course, successful and questionably, maybe potentially problematic. Yes, 13 Reasons Why does have its issues, but hey, maybe. And then getting Shawn Mendes in to do the music stuff. I mean, that is a person who I think that a certain generation of teenagers does respect, and so it does make sense.
Yep. I mean, Life is Strange is a very multiverse series.
Right.
Life is Strange True Colors,
the new one comes out next week.
Yep.
So
just around the corner.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting choices here. This will specifically be based on the first and Before the Storm era. So just those characters, your Max and Chloe story. So
right, the ones everyone should be familiar with.
Right. Anyways,
our second story, which is also more of a TV story and probably a story, also incorporates video games.
It's this one specifically about the video games that will be shown.
Yeah.
But it's Media Boat favorite.
DC Fandome.
Oh, you didn't say it like you used to.
What do you mean?
The Fandome.
Dome.
Yeah, there you go. We did it.
Yeah, the DC Fandome is back, the digital convention for DC fans to interface with different media permutations of DC Comics. Well, new trailers were revealed for two new DC titles from Warner Brothers Games. Warner Brothers Montreal's Gotham Knights and Rocksteady's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. That was more or less the last time we got major updates on those two games, though, as the former was delayed to 2022, and Suicide Squad was later positioned as years off from the get-go.
Yeah.
But it looks like we'll finally be seeing more of both games soon when Fandome takes place on October 16th. Both games got separate tweets teasing and more or less confirming their Fandome appearance on their respective Twitter accounts. We can finally get more information on what this is.
Yeah.
Gotham Knights, we know, is the multiplayer game based off of the Batman Arkham Knight series. Except you don't play as Batman, you play as the other winged caped crusaders. And Suicide Squad, coming off of the Suicide Squad, where you get to kill the Justice League.
Yeah.
Kind of got more people excited about the game than it probably deserved.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think it's an interesting time to see more of the Suicide Squad game, because that movie actually got pretty good like buzz around it. People liked it, and so I think this is a perfect time to show off a game in that universe, because people are right now feeling better about that franchise than they did after the last movie.
I mean, we did mention that it made $155 million worldwide, not including streaming numbers.
So yeah.
Good time for those to come out. All right. So I played a lot of games.
You did.
But I'm not going to talk about all of them.
How about let's just focus on these first. What I've done is I separated them. Let's talk about these first three because they came out in the year 2021. And we'll shelve the discussion until next week about the older games.
Yeah. So because I have PS Plus, I was able to quote unquote purchase these games until I actually got a PS Plus or PS5 to actually play these games. Looks like I got a PS5.
See. Looks like it.
So I was able to play these games. I was only able to play a little bit of two of them, Bugsnax and Oddworld. Okay. I don't have full reviews on or full thoughts on those yet. But they're both very creative in very different ways, especially their gameplay. Oddworld being the 2.5D, very interesting. And kind of like the Lemmings approach where everyone's trying to follow you. More of a puzzle than I thought I was going to be, and a little bit more of a challenge than I thought it was going to be. I only threw like the first like 3 levels in it though, but it's kind of fun.
Okay. Now you were a PlayStation child, so you have no history with the Oddworld games?
No history of Oddworld.
All right.
This was Oddworld Soulstorm, I believe.
Oddworld Soulstorm, yes.
Yeah. So I haven't played an Oddworld game before this. It's my first introduction into this type of world.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good, albeit a bit weird introduction. But at least I'm having a fun time with it.
Yeah.
And then there's Bugsnax.
Ooh, we're talking about Bugsnax?
Talking about Bugsnax.
Talking about Bugsnax.
Fun game. And also a bit weird. But in for like a completely different reason. And I also kind of enjoy it. It's weird. It's funky. It's different. It has a very Pokemon-esque vibe to it where I want to capture everything.
Sure.
But also in like a very unique setting where everyone's like a Wallace and Gromit otter kind of thing. I don't know how else to describe it.
Did you catch a bunger yet?
Yes.
Bunger.
Yes,
I love how all they say their own names.
And they all come out of the controller, and I think that's hilarious.
It's great.
And I love that they do it.
It's great. I love it.
It's great. It's fun. Like I said, I've just got into the open world aspect of Bugsnax.
Sure.
but so very limited into it. But it's a lot of fun. It's super cute.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to report back when you've played more.
Yep. And lastly, the game I actually want to talk about because I beat it, but at the same time, it beat me.
Yeah.
The PS Plus game Marquette.
Okay.
I highly recommend you do not play this game.
Check. Got it.
This game gave me anxiety, like the worst way possible.
Yeah.
The ability to both to like grow and shrink yourself in this puzzle kind of simulator gave me super anxiety of like the whole world is huge and I'm tiny and I'm like tiny and helpless in it.
Yeah.
But then also like the story itself of a breakup, of like a love and a breakup and never getting that closure weirdly hit me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. I like had to like stop playing the game and immediately watch Ted Lasso to just get some fun in my life. Which Ted Lasso, by the way, still hilarious. Keep watching it.
I mean, after I finished Ava Rebuild 3 or 4, I ended up watching with Christy. I watched Hot Rod, the movie Hot Rod, as a palate cleanser. I had never seen it before, and it was on Netflix. And I was like, "Oh, this is great!"
Yeah, it's cool beans.
Yeah, cool beans.
Cool beans.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But yeah, if you're playing Marquette, definitely get yourself some palate cleansers. Try not to play this game alone, or at least it may hit you stronger than it hit me. I really liked it, even though it did hit me harder than I thought it was going to.
Yeah. For
some reason, like, I can't explain why, but like the kind of like anxiety and dread you get when you shrink and everything around you is super big, but also you have to like constantly go in and out of being big and small to figure out the puzzles in the world. Oh, and also like if you want to do it for the like all the trophies, there's a time challenge for it too. Just to throw a couple extra difficulty into it. But
yeah,
the story itself is it hits hard, even though it's only 2 people. One of those people is Bryce Dallas Howard, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Doing the voice acting
Sure.
there.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, because why not? But yeah, if you take the time with Marquette, it can be both frustrating and exhilarating and stressful all at the same time. So take that with what you will.
So your mileage may vary.
Your mileage will definitely vary. Like I said, I enjoyed the puzzles and the storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a game that I'm like planning to go back into. Like I mainly started because I thought it was gonna be more like the following, The Witness, because it's like said, oh, puzzle game.
Yes.
I was like, oh, cool. I watched the trailer. Ooh, puzzles, nice. Not enough puzzles to keep me like entertained like The Witness, but enough puzzles to make me challenge like your thinking of how to accomplish things.
Yeah.
But overall, really, really good game.
Cool. I'm glad you're liking it.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll talk more about everything else at another point in time. I'll dig more into the PS collection.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad I did not play 12 minutes or Psychonauts 2 because we would not have the time to cover them. So
yeah.
So with that,
we'll wrap this episode up, and we will actually have a kind of deviation the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, but we'll get there when we get there. For now, let's wrap up this episode. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Media Boat Podcast. We'll be back next week, like we said, for a little bit of a different kind of thing, but we will be back. In the meantime, you can look at our video archive on youtube.com. Just search Media Boat Podcast. You can listen to the audio version of our podcast by searching any podcast service like Apple Music, Google Play, Amazon, Spotify, you name it. You can also find us on mediaboatpodcast.com. You can find us in social media. We're at MediaBoatCast on Twitter. Media Boat Podcast. Search that on Facebook and find our page there. You can find us streaming video games every once in a while on twitch.tv/MediaBoat. And you can email us questions, comments, or anything about the show that you're curious about at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. That'll do it. We'll see you guys next week for a special tropical edition of the Media Boat Podcast.
Yep, we'll be back with more news next week. And in the meantime, I've got a plane to catch. So
All right,
bye.
go do it. Bye-bye.